Tonight, Russia is being rattled by attacks on its own territory, as well as a key port city in occupied Ukraine. Our senior international correspondent, Sam Kiley, is joining us live now from eastern Ukraine. Sam, Russian officials trying to reassure residents living under Kremlin control, but these attacks are really intensifying.
They are intensifying, Alex. In addition to the one you referred to there in Berdyansk, there was a drone attack in Smolensk on an oil refinery or some similar type building. And of course, there have been ongoing incursions and attacks much closer to here, just north on the border between Ukraine and Russia. And it's those, I think, that have really shaken the Russians up.
A Ukrainian strike in Russian-occupied Berdyansk.
Классно! Классно как вообще.
It's heating up across several fronts in Russia. The governor of Belgorod province struggles to reassure a rattled population.
I heard that the armed forces of Ukraine continue to shell our territory. More than 2,500 people are staying in temporary accommodation facilities in Belgorod. There are many questions that residents of Shebekino and border villages are asking, starting with, who will pay my utilities? What about our property? Who is watching over it?
Ukrainian-backed Russian dissident soldiers claim to have raided Russia a second time. In a stunt that could have been filmed anywhere, one fighter displayed a fridge magnet from Belgorod on social media. Soon you too will be able to walk in free Belgorod, and then across all Russia, he said. Vladimir Putin has stepped in to steady the national nerves.
Today, we will also address these issues in relation to ensuring Russia's security, in this case, domestic political security. Considering the efforts our foes are still taking and stepping up in order to destabilize the situation inside Russia, we must do everything we can to prevent this from happening at any cost.
The US setting out some grim truths for Moscow.
When you look at President Putin's long-term strategic aims and objectives, there is no question. Russia is significantly worse off today than it was before its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, militarily, economically, geopolitically.
That's certainly the message that Ukraine's trying to deliver to Russia, and now by force.
And Alex, that message has been forcefully delivered once again with a partisan attack claimed by Ukrainian supporters inside the occupied town of Melitopol, with the bombing of a car killing one so-called collaborator and injuring at least 3 others. And we are seeing a lot more of these sorts of events, particularly close to that southern front where both sides, both the Russians and the Ukrainians, have been pounding each other ever more infrequently with artillery. Alex.
Yeah, really a remarkable escalation. Sam Kiley in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine. Thank you very much for that report. Let's discuss all this with CNN contributor of Russian affairs, Jill Doherty, and retired Colonel Cedric Leighton, a CNN military analyst. Thank you both for joining me this evening. Jill, I'm really struck by that soundbite that Sam just played from Vladimir Putin. They're assuring his population that we will do everything we can to prevent this from happening at any cost. He's really having to tell the Russian population this will be okay. What do you think he's going to do? How can he follow through on that promise?
I don't think that he can. I mean, these attacks are coming. They seem incapable of stopping them. I mean, if they could, they would, but they continue. And then you have the drone attacks just a few days ago in Moscow. So I think he's got a real problem in a lot of the way he approaches it is don't talk about it, you know. But the fact that they have that quote today, he is trying to tell people it's okay. As he always says, it's under control, but it's not under control.
And those residents certainly feeling that it's not under control. And Cedric, some dramatic language. The Ukrainians saying that the gates of war have now been opened. Clearly, these attacks inside Russia are putting the Kremlin off balance. They seem to be rattled as well. But do you see any downside, any risks to this?
Well, there certainly are, Alex. I think one of the key things that the Ukrainians have to watch out for is attacking too many civilian targets in Russia. You know, right now they're on the moral high ground, right? They own all of that because the people that are actually attacking civilian targets are the Russians for the most part. And that has given Ukraine a lot of support in a material sense, in a diplomatic sense, and certainly in a military sense. And Ukraine risks something very big here if it does something that does not impact the military objective directly. In other words, if they go into the civilian side of things. So they have to be very careful to concentrate more on the military side, and yes, even on the political side. But the one thing that they have done very well is sow distrust, terror in the minds of the Russian population.
The White House has said very clearly they would rather they not see Ukraine striking inside of Russia. Jill, it is now very apparent to the Russian citizens themselves that these strikes are taking place. You have these attacks against smaller border towns in the western part of Russia, but you also have these recent drone attacks near Moscow, including in and around a neighborhood that is where some of the elite live. So to what extent do you think the Russian sentiment about the war is changing and changing more against it?
You know, I think an interesting part of this is that when it's been happening in that town that we just saw the video from, Shebekino, I mean, that's been hit for months, and nobody really talked about it. The people out there feel, hey, you know, you don't talk about it until it happens in Moscow. So I think what you're seeing is the class differences, the elite versus the average people, being affected by the war, and a certain amount of kind of pushback. Even the mayor looks not very comfortable about what's going on. Significantly, Putin actually got on the phone and called him yesterday and said, "What do you need?"
Again, trying to reassure people. Colonel, we only have a few moments left, but we are all waiting for this counteroffensive, of course, to start in earnest. Once it starts, with all of the new training they've gotten, all of the new weapons that they have gotten, what are the challenges that they are going to face in terms of breaking through that Russian line and taking back Russian-occupied territory? So
during this period that we've been waiting for, you have all of these tank traps that have been built. You have all of the different emplacements, all the trenches, every type of thing that the Russians could throw at this, they have thrown at this. So they have a very strong defensive line. Now, that line is only as strong as long as the people in the Russian army man that line. If they're not there, if they defect, if they retreat, if they do anything like that or desert, then it's going to be a major mess, and the Ukrainians can very much exploit that.
All right. Well, we're still waiting for this to start. Colonel Cedric Leighton, Jill Doherty, thank you very much. Always appreciate your thoughts.
You bet.